Hello and a very warm welcome to the Counterpoint podcast. I'm Shubham Agarwal and we're going to speak about the real estate sector today. The real estate business in the country has always seen an upward curve, with the pandemic obviously a small exception where the demand took a hit. But the demand is back and the sector is looking at unprecedented growth rates. However, there's a specific metric that the real estate companies look at internally as a measure for their profitability and growth, the IRR or the internal rate of return. Now, if you look at some 10 years back, you would see these IRRs being anywhere between 18 and 21%. However, in the past few years, it has gone down to about 13 to 17%, which is concerning for the sector. And this is an interesting situation to discuss where the demand is on a high, yet the companies, real estate companies, have their IRRs dropping. We have Shantonu Ghosh with us today, a senior partner of the Vector Consulting Group, who has helped many real estate companies break this dichotomous situation. So let's welcome him and talk to him more about this. Hi Shantanu, welcome to the Counterpoint podcast.
Hi Shubham.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Shantanu, as I mentioned in the introduction as well, this is a very interesting situation, isn't it? With the demand being on a high, the real estate sector is growing at unprecedented levels in the past few years. However, the IRR, the internal rate of return, which is a measure of their internal profitability and growth, is still going down. It's on a downward trend.
Yeah, true. Shubham, I think for that we need to understand what IRR is.
Right. And that's what I wanted to ask, that, what are some of the factors that contribute to the IRR? How is that equation created, which contributes to IRR?
So IRR is typically a measure of the profitability of an investment.
Okay.
And if we want to look at what factors affect it, it is typically the investment that we put in and the cash flows that are expected to be generated from that investment.
Okay.
And the timing of those cash flows, which is really important.
So when you say the timing of the cash flows, does that relate to the efficiency, the time efficiency of the projects being delivered on time? Is that so?
Yeah, true. Because every project, every real estate project actually generates cash flows as it goes along. If you look at IRR, the earlier that those cash flows are generated, the better is the IRR, because it is, after all, the measure of the present value of the cash flow.
Right. So tell me, RERA was also introduced a few years back, right? And with RERA introduced, the timely efficiencies have, I'm given to understand with the data that we have, that it has improved drastically, right? So that would have helped the IRR, isn't it?
Extremely good question. And this is a paradox, right?
Okay.
We have, on the one hand, the RERA ensuring that timelines are met, otherwise builders get penalized.
Correct.
And on the other hand, we have IRRs which are going down. So we need to understand this. What RERA has done is actually ensured that there is a deadline to a project.
Correct.
The due date.
Yeah.
It has not given any guideline on how that due date is set.
Oh, okay. So can you elaborate this? When you say how the due date is set, there's no guideline to that. Yeah. But yet the customers, whatever the end dates are given to the customers, they are being met, right?
Yes. So what the RERA does is it asks the real estate company or the builder to set a due date.
Okay.
And then they measure the builder for the completion of the project on that due date.
Right.
Now, having seen this, the builders build in a lot of time buffer in those estimates of due dates, because they are safeguarding themselves against getting penalized, and the penalty is heavy, by the way,
right,
on violating a RERA due date. So when such a thing happens, they buffer their estimates, but internally, to calculate their own profitabilities, they have a different due date set, based on which they calculate their IRRs, based on which they calculate their return on investment. And when we look at these internal dates, they're extremely tight. And the entire IRR calculation based on which they're calculating their profitability is on these stringent timelines.
Right.
When you fail on these timelines, when you fail on these cash flows, because the cash flows are based on these timelines.
Right.
So when you fail on these cash flows, the IRR is the one which comes under pressure.
So Shantanu, you said that, the RERA dates are the rates that are being given to the customers, right? As a measure of timely delivery of the projects.
Right.
And there are internal rates as well. How do the customers, I want to also look at how the customers look at this date. Do they think that the dates are, good enough, or do they also feel that there's a lot of buffer and these are being stretched?
So the interesting thing here, Shubham, is that the customers are also given a date.
Okay.
And this date lies somewhere in between the internal due date and the RERA date. So very interesting, and the industry has a terminology for it. They call it the soft possession date.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
this date is,
great.
so this date is typically, 4 or 5 months ahead of the RERA date. It's to pacify, so to speak, the customer because they're concerned since the RERA dates are a little too far off. And they say that we'll complete it maybe 5-6 months earlier. We'll give it to you for doing, say, interiors or things like that.
Right.
And ultimately, there is no legal binding to that soft possession date, but they give it to pacify customers.
It's like, I'm reminded of a analogy from the retail sector where you're shown that this is so and so value,
Yeah.
and there's a cut, and then this is the actual value, right?
Correct,
So
absolutely.
okay, great. But interesting. So tell me, you said that the IRR is dependent on the timely completion of the project, and there's an internal rate.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the internal rates are not being met, and this is why the IRRs is going down. How come that buffer is getting eaten so much so that the IRRs are going down so significantly?
So if we have to look at that, we have to get a little deeper into the way a real estate project is executed.
Okay.
Typically, if we look at the life cycle of a real estate project, it is mainly consisting of 3 major stages.
Okay. And what would be those stages?
Yeah, so one would be what we call as the pre-construction stage, where all the detailed designing is done. The code for construction drawings are given to the site. We all know about show flats, right?
Right. Yeah.
So show flats are built. Then you need to have a sales office to even launch a project. So a sales office is built, and that is all part of pre-construction.
Okay.
So once this is done, then the construction actually starts at the site, and then the first major construction stage is what we call as the core and shell.
Okay.
The core and shell is basically the RCC structure of the building with all the wall partitions,
Okay.
and this constitutes, what we also call as the gray casting of the building.
Okay. So to say the skeleton of
The skeleton of the building, absolutely.
Right.
Very well put. The skeleton of the building. And then once the skeleton is ready, then comes what we call as the finishing stage.
Okay.
Now, what is the finishing stage? Finishing stage is something which starts after skeleton and goes right up till handover to the final customer, which means it has everything from plastering to plumbing to electrical to tiling to painting. So you can imagine it's a plethora of functions which start immediately after the core and shell is done.
So if I were to ask you, you define those 3 stages. Is it a specific stage where the delays start to creep in, or is it that delays are across the stages and they add up and then?
If we look at the project launch, which is the pre-construction phase, that is stringently there too because it is also communicated publicly. Then the core and shell is usually done by one agency.
Okay.
And it typically gets done without any delay.
Okay.
Here and there, a little here and there, but more or less on time.
Right.
But it's the finishing stage which from where delay starts happening and they keep on increasing as the project progresses.
Oh, okay.
So you can start with almost no delay to reach about, say, 30, 35%, 40% delay by the time you end the project.
Okay. And what are these delays typically, as in what is the nature of these delays typically? Where does the time get starting, compromise and so on and so forth?
So let me detail out the finishing stage a little for better understanding of this. Now, as I said, core and shell is done by mostly one agency.
Right.
But finishing involves a lot of agencies to come together, maybe 9 or 10, which come together to work in a very restricted area of the flat or a corridor. If you look at it, there is a lot of interdependent activities.
Right.
Handovers to be done of work from one agency to another. And there is another important metric. The contractors are measured on volume.
Okay.
So the contracts are volume based, which means the more work they do, and the more
the money
they get.
generate,
So their money is linked to the volume of work which is done. Now, when this is in this environment, when this is brought in, you look at it this way. I'm a contractor.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that if I get in there with my people, the company is paying me for the volume of work, but I have to pay my people daily.
Correct.
Right? So I have to get the maximum out of them in the period that they are engaged.
Correct. Yeah.
Right?
He has to maximize the
He has to maximize
output that he gets. Right.
So he maximizes what we call as the billing or his invoicing. Now, to do that, he takes up all the, shall we say, the easy work.
Okay.
Or he cherry picks the work that he does, which means I get a high volume with low effort. I say I will go to the next work front and do the high volume rather than do the low volume in this work front. I said I will come back and do it.
Yeah.
Now, when this thing happens, I'm handing over to some other agency, right?
Right. Yeah.
When I hand over to another agency who is also interested in engaging their labor force with the same metric, cannot keep them idle, they start to do whatever is available, wherever is available. And as we go along this entire journey, the work fronts keep opening without closing.
Okay.
So I have a lot of work fronts open in the project side, but none of them are closing. And to add to that is what we talked about. When we work like this, there's a lot of quality problems also that come in.
Right. Right.
And since the quality problems are many, the work fronts are many, the supervisor of the real estate company, he really does not have the bandwidth to go and check each and every front. And hence, things get left out.
Right. But the manager or the supervisor of the project does have a option of spacing the contractors out. Is he on purpose bringing them all together at the same point?
It has to come back together because I hand over to someone. Like if I am a if I am a plastering contractor, then the tiling work gets done and I come and do the plastering. I do the plastering, then only I hand over to painting.
Yeah.
So, and when, say I'm a plastering contractor, even the skirting has to be finished before I come and finish the plastering.
Right.
My doors and windows installation has to be done before I complete the plastering. So it's a lot of
work.
There's a lot of intertwined work.
Right. Yeah.
So I cannot finish my work before without some other agency coming and doing some portion, and then I have to come back and finish it in a sort of a second pass.
And all of this has to be done in that same space. The space of a house is very small. So that would create further confusion and challenges for the contractors as well as for the supervisor.
So very limited workspace.
Correct.
And multiple agencies operating in that workspace. So it creates a lot of quality issues.
Right.
When these quality issues actually come back to bite you at the end, when there's a huge snag list. Now look at the interesting part of this snag list. This is high effort, low volume job.
Yeah.
No contractor wants to do this. So you have to give extra rates to actually get contractors to come in and finish off your punch list. So this increases the elapsed time even further, also increases the cost of the real estate company.
Right.
So this is how the entire delay happens in the finishing stage. And the longer it goes, the higher it is delayed.
So I think, Shantanu, this is very clear as to, the extent of the problems that exist. And we have, I think, touched upon some of the problems as well, as in the reasons as well why those problems start to happen. And the length at which those problems are happening and the problems at the supervisor's end are also, I think, very visible to us. However, when, at Vector, we have this first principle philosophy where we keep on asking why until we really reach that core issue or the core reason, which is, building to all of these. If I were to ask you, what is that core issue or where is it really germinating from? What would that be?
So Shubham, if you see the experience of people in this industry, they are always experience these delays.
Correct.
Right? So their entire thought process is that somewhere this project is going to get delayed. And it's going to get delayed as maybe heavily as we go along during the duration of the project.
Right.
So the entire tendency is to not have any delay, at least at the start.
Okay. Yeah.
So what happens is that they try to start each work front as soon as possible.
Oh, okay.
as soon as it is made available. Even to the extent of, even if they have a uh, partial material, partial kit to start, they will start with whatever is available in the hope that they will get the balance as the progress.
Okay.
And if that doesn't come, then that work front is delayed. And then this chain reaction sets in. It's a kind of a vicious loop, because you start with a partial kit, you stop somewhere, you open another work front, you go there, leave it, go to another, and then the entire thing spreads out. So the entire problem lies in the fact that, you start with a partial kit. You start as soon as possible, even without complete material, complete resources, complete approvals.
Yeah.
All those you have to wait for.
Right. That's actually very counterintuitive, or counterpoint as we call it, because typically we are given to believe that if you can start early, why not? So Shantanu, I think what is very clearly coming out once again is that the core issue is basically not just starting early, but starting early with a partial kit or the partial full kit, not having all the resources that are required to complete that work.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah. So that actually forms the crux of the problem.
Okay. Yep.
Where, I do not have the complete kit. I start, I stop, I have interruptions,
Right.
and I go somewhere else. So everywhere I have interruptions without completion.
Right.
And that compounds the delay as we progress.
Correct. When you say compounds the delay, can you tell us the extent of these delays that we have typically seen across
So
projects?
Shubham, with the real estate projects that I have seen, the delay can be anywhere between, say, 30 to 40% of the lead time of the project, which is, if I want to translate it into the number of months, it can be anywhere between 9 to 12 months.
Oh God. This is people waiting for their homes, isn't it?
People waiting for their homes, actually, yes.
Right. But no one would want to be in that situation, I guess. Yes. Right. So, Shantu, I think you've solved this issue for a lot of real estate companies in the past as well, at Vector, right? And I want to first understand what is the kind of impact that you've seen with the solutions that we've implemented.
So with the solutions, Shubham, that we have in place for this kind of industry, typically we've seen 25 to 30% reduction in lead times, which means somewhere between, say, a 4 to 7% jump in IRR for the companies.
That's incredible, in fact. Yeah.
So typically companies go above that 20%, 21% IRR mark when they start operating under these kind of rules that we implement.
Okay. Great. Then we just can't wait to hear the solution as well. So can you tell us what are the components of the solution? How do we break this conundrum? How do we break this vicious loop that you explained as well?
So the idea is to start with a full kit, right?
Yeah.
Now, but what do we base the full kit on? If I base it on the entire project, because I will, as it is, be delayed.
Correct. Yeah. It will be a gigantic task to find the full kit for the entire project.
It will be too long to actually make it. Plus, the kind of working capital I'll put in just to store that kind of material.
Oh yeah, right.
It's a huge wastage of resource. Now, if I go back and check the other extreme, if it becomes too small, I cannot make it too big. Can I make it too small? But if I make it too small and my execution time is shorter than the time to make that kit, then I go back to the situation I'm in today.
Correct.
So I have to find something which is more middle path here. And for that, we have devised what we call as a work bundle.
Okay.
A work bundle is typically an entity that is based on the type of project, the type of technicalities, the type of resourcing which is there, and if I look at the specs of the project, the work bundle gets designed according to that. Now, what does a work bundle do? It is an entity which is good enough for me to actually have, or which is time enough for me to have to make it, and which is not too big, which means I can finish it quickly and hand it over to the next agency. And so a work bundle is typically something which I make and I give to the next agency to start working. if I want to take an analogy, the analogy is something like you look at a manufacturing shop. There is an input of raw materials. A set of processes or machines work on that material, and out comes the finished goods. Now, if I go look at a work bundle is something like that. A work bundle comes into the manufacturing shop, the agencies work on it, and then they push it out. So every the entire project is divided into multiple work bundles like this. And the full kit is maintained for each work bundle. You cannot start until the full kit for the work bundle is complete. And when you start, you finish and you hand over to the next agency.
So those handover criteria, those closure criteria are very, very defined.
So the entry criteria and the exit criteria is very clearly defined. And only after they are met are they handed over to the next. This ensures clean handovers and complete workflows.
But in that case, we'll have to change a lot of metrics as well. You said that the metrics of these contractors are based on the volumes or, the way they work.
Correct. So there is another place where we need to address this. You look at it, I talked about interdependencies and I talked about multiple agencies coming and working together. If I have work bundles like this going, there could still be chances of multiple agencies coming in and disturbing this entire thing. So there is another set of execution rules that we put in place. Typically, any finishing work in a real estate project constitutes two types of functions. One is a primary, what we call as a primary function, which has what we call as a high touch time and less natural interruptions. When I say touch time, it means that if everything was available and the time I would take to complete that particular work front is the touch time to complete that work front. Natural interruptions is something that if I'm working, I have to naturally now wait for something else to happen before I can start working.
It's like saying that I want to paint. So until unless one coat of the paint is dried down, I can't do the next one.
Right. Absolutely. So these are natural interruptions. So there is a function which has a high touch time and low natural interruptions, which we call as the primary function. And then there is a secondary function, which is the exact opposite, which is low touch time, but very high interruptions.
And this is not the natural time, but the interruptions that are there.
There are low natural interruptions. So, I have, say, a tiling person who is doing skirting. I have to do this skirting here, then wait for the next set of functions to be done before I come back and do it again. So in an area, there is a combination of primary and secondary function. And these we term as a cluster. So now what are we saying? We are saying that a cluster is formed. A cluster is a sequence of events which will happen in the real estate project based on technical dependencies of these clusters. And these clusters will work according to the work bundles. Now, what am I ensuring here? I'm ensuring full kit. I'm ensuring entry and closure criteria. And I'm also ensuring that only a certain set of people are working and handing over to each other wherever there are the interdependencies within the cluster only. It cannot go across the clusters. So the cluster also has an exit criteria. I finish that, then go to the next cluster. So people come in, finish their work and come out. So the entire...
that will make the work for the supervisor also very convenient or, much more easy to be tracked because now he has those work bundles defined. He can simply go back and understand if the work bundle was defined well and it was executed well or not until it was moved to the next.
Correct. We also call it management by exits. Right? So,
interesting.
So why we call it management by exits is that a contractor, when he goes into a certain cluster, he finishes work and comes back, never goes back there again. Now look what it is ensuring. It is ensuring that the entire billing entity for that contractor is ensured he's finished and he's come out. So his need for invoicing is also met by the
So it actually makes the line better for the contractors as well. Because I'm sure in the current situation, they would also be irritated and confused about the entire thing.
So they just go and finish their part of the cluster because they have full kit, they can do it at a very fast rate. They finish it quickly, and then they come out and they get paid for it. So it becomes a kind of a win-win situation for both the real estate company and the contractor. And that ensures that work is happening at the fastest possible pace. There is only one more element.
Sure, yeah. Otherwise, is there any element that is missed out? Yeah.
So there is one more element which can actually derail this entire the concept.
Even after doing all of this?
Even after doing all of this.
Okay.
See, this is after all a project.
Right.
I cannot predict accurately what issues will happen in the project before even I start doing or executing that project.
Murphy will definitely hit.
Yeah, Murphy will definitely hit. Issues, problems will definitely come.
Correct.
Now the problem comes when these issues, these problems are not addressed quickly.
Okay.
If there is a delay in addressing issues and my contractor is not getting their work front, they are idle, their labor is idle, they will naturally shift it to someplace else.
Right.
And then the entire good work that has been done gets broken and we go back slowly to the old way of working. Right. So we have a process called high frequency management, which addresses this particular
quick decision making.
Yeah, it's quick decision making.
Right.
So we set up what we call as flow meetings at various levels of the organization, where every problem that is encountered is addressed in the most aggressive way. We call it aggressive issue resolution. It is addressed in the most aggressive way, and if it is cannot be addressed by a lower level, it is automatically addressed at a higher level.
Right. Yeah.
These meetings are set at predefined frequencies.
Okay.
Which means all calendars are matched. Typically to get somebody to come to a meeting, it's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Even 4 people coming together can solve an issue in 15 minutes, but getting those 4 people may take 3-4 days.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So these meetings are at predefined frequencies, calendars are set, and any issue that occurs at any level is either resolved there or escalated to the next level immediately. So aggressive issue resolution ensures that my issues are getting resolved, which are occurring during execution, and the rest of the processes ensures that all this makes the project happen at the fastest possible manner.
Perfect. I think, Shantanu, when we have a win-win solution in place, and when we have also looked at what that solution could create a problem, and we have targeted that as well, I think that is the recipe for true success in our parlance.
True.
And I think we've reached that level for that.
Yes.
So thanks a lot for this discussion once again.
Thank you, Shobh.
This is really helpful.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Thanks. And thanks for all the listeners. I think you would have gotten a very detailed view of the entire sector, the problems that happen. And if you are from that sector, you would have actually witnessed it at some level as well. And we also spoke about the solution in detail. We'll keep coming back with more discussion on the podcast and keep discussing more interesting topics. Until then, this is Shubham signing off. Bye-bye.